The strangest traditions in history. Some people used to throw their babies off temples for good luck, and that's not even the weirdest thing humans have done in the name of tradition. Throughout history, humans have come up with some absolutely bonkers ways to celebrate life, death, marriage, and pretty much everything in between. We're talking about traditions so bizarre that if someone suggested them today, you'd probably call the cops. But back then, totally normal Tuesday activities. I've spent weeks digging through historical records, and what I found will make you question everything you thought you knew about human behavior. We're going to explore traditions that involved shooting arrows at brides, burying sausages for weather luck, and yes, people literally dying from laughter. By the end of this video, you'll discover why ancient Greeks thought the funniest joke in history was worth dying for, how a German mayor's beard became a deadly weapon, and the shocking reason why some cultures still practice baby tossing today. But first, let me tell you about a tradition so dangerous that it killed more people than some wars. Let's start with something that sounds like a rejected idea from the Hunger Games. In ancient Rome, they had this thing called trial by ordeal. Basically, if someone accused you of a crime, you had to prove your innocence by surviving something that would probably kill you. Picture this. You're standing in front of a Roman judge, and he's like, "Okay, Marcus, to prove you didn't steal that goat, you need to walk across these red-hot coals barefoot. If your feet don't get completely destroyed, you're innocent. If they do, well, you're probably guilty and also crispy." The Romans weren't the only ones doing this madness. In medieval Europe, they'd make you stick your hand in boiling water to grab a stone. If your hand healed without infection in 3 days, God clearly thought you were innocent. If it got infected and you died, well, that's what you get for being a criminal, apparently. But here's where it gets really wild. In some parts of Africa, they had the trial by poison. You'd drink a toxic mixture made from tree bark, and if you threw it up, you were innocent. If you didn't throw it up, you died, which meant you were guilty. Talk about a lose-lose situation. The craziest part? This wasn't some rare occurrence. Thousands of people went through these trials, and historians estimate that about 60% of them died. That's a worse survival rate than most horror movies. But if you think risking death for justice is insane, wait until you hear about the tradition where people literally died from having too much fun. This is the story of Chrysippus, a Greek philosopher who became the first recorded person to die from laughter. And the joke that killed him? A donkey eating figs. Picture ancient Greece, around 206 BC. Chrysippus was this super serious philosopher who spent his days thinking deep thoughts about logic and reason. The guy literally invented propositional logic. You know, those if this, then that statements we still use today. So one day, Chrysippus is at a party, probably discussing the meaning of existence or whatever philosophers talk about at parties. He's had a few drinks, and he stumbles outside where he sees a donkey just going to town on some figs. Now, for some reason, this struck Chrysippus as the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the way the donkey was chewing, but he starts laughing, and he can't stop. He's laughing so hard that he yells to his servant, "Give the donkey some wine to wash down those figs!" This apparently made it even funnier to him, and he just completely loses it. The guy is laughing so hard that he can't breathe. He's rolling on the ground, tears streaming down his face, and then he just dies, right there, from laughing too hard at a donkey. Here's the kicker. Modern science says this is actually possible. If you laugh hard enough for long enough, you can have a heart attack or pass out from lack of oxygen. So Chrysippus literally laughed himself to death over what was basically ancient Greek slapstick comedy. The best part? His students were so embarrassed by how their brilliant teacher died that they made up a more dignified story about him dying from drinking too much wine. But the donkey story stuck around because, let's be honest, it's way more memorable. Speaking of memorable deaths, let me tell you about a guy whose facial hair became his downfall. Literally. Meet Hans Steininger, a 16th century Austrian politician who had the most magnificent beard you've ever seen. We're talking 4.5 feet of pure facial hair glory. This thing was so impressive that people would travel from neighboring towns just to see it. Hans was actually a pretty successful guy. He was the mayor of a town called Braunau am Inn for 6 consecutive terms. People loved him, partly because of his policies, but mostly because of that incredible beard. I mean, who wouldn't vote for a guy whose beard could probably be seen from space? Now, Hans was very protective of his beard. He usually kept it tucked away in a special leather pouch to keep it safe and clean. Think of it like a beard purse. But on September 28th, 1567, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the town, and Hans rushed to help fight it. In his panic, he forgot to tuck his beard into its protective pouch. So there he is, running through the streets with 4.5 feet of beard flowing behind him like some kind of hairy superhero cape. Hans is rushing down a flight of stairs when the inevitable happens. He steps on his own beard. The guy trips, tumbles down the entire staircase, and breaks his neck. He died instantly. The townspeople were so devastated by losing their beloved bearded mayor that they had his beard carefully removed and preserved. You can still see it today in a museum in Austria. Hans's ghost is probably still mad about that. But here's what makes this even more ridiculous. Hans had successfully managed that beard for decades. He'd walked up and down those same stairs thousands of times. But the one time he forgets to tuck it away, boom, death by facial hair. Now, if you think dying from your own beard is embarrassing, wait until you hear about the lawyer who accidentally proved his client's innocence by shooting himself. This is the story of Clement Vallandigham, an American lawyer who took dying for your client way too literally. It's 1871, and Clement is defending a guy named Thomas McGeehan, who's accused of murdering someone named Tommy Myers. The prosecution says McGeehan shot Myers during a fight. But Clement has a different theory. He believes Myers accidentally shot himself while trying to draw his gun. It sounds plausible enough, but how do you prove it in court? Well, if you're Clement Vallandigham, you decide to demonstrate it yourself. So there's Clement in the courtroom, standing in front of the judge and jury, holding what he thinks is an unloaded pistol. He's explaining his theory. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Myers was simply trying to draw his weapon when, bang, Clement shoots himself in the stomach. Right there in the courtroom, in front of everyone. The courtroom erupts in chaos. Clement is bleeding all over the place, probably thinking, well, this is awkward. He's rushed to the hospital, where he dies 12 hours later from his injuries. But here's the crazy part. His demonstration worked. The jury was so convinced by his accidental self-shooting that they found McGeehan not guilty. Clement literally died, proving his client's innocence. The story gets even weirder. McGeehan, the guy Clement died to save, was murdered a few years later. So Clement died for nothing, basically. This case became famous in legal circles as one of the most bizarre courtroom incidents in history. Law schools still teach about it today as an example of what not to do when defending a client. But if you think accidentally shooting yourself is bad, let me tell you about traditions that were intentionally dangerous. In parts of India, there's a tradition called baby tossing that's exactly what it sounds like. Parents literally throw their babies off the roof of a temple. Before you call child services, let me explain. This isn't some random act of baby violence. It's a 700-year-old religious tradition practiced by both Hindus and Muslims in certain regions of Maharashtra and Karnataka. Here's how it works. Parents bring their babies, usually under 2 years old, to a temple. A priest takes the baby, says some prayers, and then drops the child from a height of about 30 to 50 feet. But, and this is important, there's a group of men below holding a large sheet to catch the baby. The tradition is supposed to bring good luck, health, and prosperity to the child. Parents believe it makes their kids stronger and protects them from evil spirits. It's like extreme baptism. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds incredibly dangerous, and you're right. But surprisingly, there are very few recorded injuries. The men holding the sheet are experienced, and they take it seriously. Still, it's the kind of tradition that makes modern safety experts break out in cold sweats. The practice has been controversial for years. Child rights activists have been trying to get it banned, arguing that it's dangerous and traumatic for the babies. But in the communities where it's practiced, it's seen as an important cultural and religious tradition. What's really interesting is that this tradition has survived for centuries, even under British colonial rule and modern Indian government oversight. It shows how deeply rooted some cultural practices can be, even when they seem completely insane to outsiders. Speaking of traditions that seem insane to outsiders, let's talk about a Spanish festival where people throw tomatoes at each other for an hour straight. La Tomatina is basically the world's biggest food fight, and it happens every year in a small Spanish town called Buñol. On the last Wednesday of August, about 20,000 people gather to throw overripe tomatoes at each other until the streets look like a crime scene from a horror movie. The whole thing started in 1945 during a parade. One of the performers was wearing a big costume head that fell off during the festivities. The guy got angry and started hitting things, including a vegetable stand. Other people joined in, and soon everyone was pelting each other with tomatoes. The police broke it up, but the next year, people showed up with their own tomatoes, ready for round two. The authorities tried to stop it again, but it kept happening. Eventually, the town just gave up and made it official. Now it's a massive tourist attraction. The town brings in trucks full of specially grown tomatoes, about 150,000 kilograms of them. That's roughly 330,000 pounds of tomato ammunition. The rules are simple. Squish the tomatoes before throwing them to avoid injuries, don't bring bottles or hard objects, and stop when you hear the second cannon shot. For exactly 1 hour, it's complete tomato chaos. By the end, the streets are covered in red pulp, and everyone looks like they've been in a food processor. The cleanup involves fire trucks hosing down the entire town center. What makes this tradition so weird is that it serves no religious or cultural purpose. It's not celebrating anything specific. It's just pure messy fun that somehow became a tradition because people kept doing it. But if throwing food seems wasteful, let me tell you about a tradition where people bury sausages to control the weather. This is a real thing that's happening right now in the UK. Brides are burying sausages the day before their weddings to ensure good weather. I'm not making this up. The tradition supposedly works like this. You take a sausage, usually a Cumberland or bratwurst, and bury it in your backyard the day before your wedding. If you do it right, the weather gods will bless you with sunshine on your big day. There's no ancient folklore behind this. No religious significance. It's just something that started spreading on social media, particularly TikTok, and now brides are actually doing it. The best part? Some brides swear it works. They post videos of themselves burying sausages and then showing off their perfect wedding weather the next day. Of course, they conveniently forget to post when it rains anyway. Weather experts have pointed out that burying meat products has absolutely no effect on atmospheric conditions. But that hasn't stopped desperate brides from turning their gardens into sausage graveyards. This tradition is fascinating because it shows how quickly new superstitions can spread in the internet age. Something that started as a joke became a genuine practice that people actually believe in. From ancient philosophers dying of laughter to modern brides burying breakfast meats, humans have always found creative ways to make life more interesting. These traditions might seem crazy, but they all serve the same purpose. They bring people together, create shared experiences, and give us stories to tell. The next time you think modern life is weird, just remember that somewhere in history, someone thought it was perfectly normal to throw babies off buildings or die laughing at donkeys. At least we just argue about pineapple on pizza. And hey, if you're getting married soon, maybe skip the sausage burial and just check the weather forecast instead. Your garden will thank you. If you thought these traditions were wild, wait until you see what people used to do at funerals. That video is absolutely insane, and I guarantee it'll make you appreciate modern burial practices. Click here to watch it, and don't forget to subscribe for more bizarre historical content that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about human behavior.